Hey there, you're looking kind of cute. Don't forget to subscribe and check out all my other socials. Enjoy. The sun peeked through the blinds across Jorge's face. He groaned, rolling over to shield his eyes from the unwelcome intrusion. As consciousness slowly crept in, so did the memory of last night's ill-fated poker game with his stepmother, Maria. Dios mío, he muttered, rubbing his temples. The hangover was bad enough, but the realization of what he'd agreed to made his stomach churn even more. A bet was a bet, and Jorge was nothing if not a man of his word, even if that meant spending an afternoon as a woman. He fumbled for his phone, squinting at the screen. 3 missed calls from Maria and a text that simply read, "Don't forget our plans today, querido. I'll be there at noon." Jorge glanced at the time. 11:30 a.m. He had half an hour to prepare himself mentally for what was sure to be a bizarre day. Dragging himself out of bed, he shuffled to the bathroom. The face that greeted him in the mirror was a mess of stubble and bloodshot eyes. He splashed some cold water on his face, trying to wash away the remnants of last night's poor decisions. As he stood there staring at his reflection, Jorge couldn't help but wonder how he'd ended up in this situation. At 28, unemployed and living in a cramped apartment, he wasn't exactly living his best life. The occasional poker night with Maria had become a lifeline, a way to feel connected to someone. But last night, fueled by too much tequila and misplaced confidence, he'd made the foolish bet that led to today's predicament. The doorbell rang, startling Jorge out of his reverie. He glanced at his watch. Noon on the dot. Maria was nothing if not punctual. Taking a deep breath, he opened the door to find his stepmother beaming at him, arms laden with bags. "Jorge, are you ready for your transformation?" Maria breezed past him, her perfume leaving a trail of jasmine in her wake. She was dressed impeccably as always. At 45, she looked a decade younger, a fact she took great pride in. "Maria, about last night?" Jorge began, but she cut him off with a wave of her manicured hand. "A bet is a bet, cariño. Now let's get started. We have a lot of work to do." For the next hour, Jorge's small apartment became a whirlwind of activity. Maria unpacked her bags, revealing an array of clothing, makeup, and accessories that made Jorge's head spin. She worked with the precision of a surgeon, first tackling his facial hair with a razor, and then moving on to his legs. "Trust me," she said, noticing his apprehension. "Smooth legs will make all the difference." As Maria worked, Jorge found himself relaxing. There was something oddly soothing about the process. The gentle scrape of the razor against his skin, the cool sensation of the shaving cream. When she finished, he ran a hand along his calf, marveling at the smoothness. "Now for the fun part," Maria announced, holding up a dress. It was a simple navy blue sundress with white polka dots. "I thought we'd start with something classic." Jorge eyed the garment warily. "I don't know about this, Maria." "Nonsense," she replied, thrusting the dress into his hands. "Go put it on. And don't forget these." She handed him a padded bra and a pair of pantyhose. Alone in his bedroom, Jorge stared at the items in his hands. This was it, the point of no return. With a sigh, he began to undress. The pantyhose were a challenge, clinging to his newly smooth legs in a way that felt foreign, yet not entirely unpleasant. The bra was trickier, and he fumbled with the clasps before finally getting it situated. When he slipped the dress over his head, he was surprised by how light and airy it felt against his skin. "Well?" Maria called from the other room. "Let me see." Jorge stepped out, feeling exposed and vulnerable, but the look on Maria's face wasn't one of mockery or judgment. Instead, her eyes lit up with genuine delight. "Oh, Jorge," she breathed. "You look beautiful." He turned to look in the full-length mirror on his closet door, and his breath caught in his throat. The person staring back at him was different. The dress hugged his waist, creating the illusion of curves where there were none. His legs, now smooth and adorned with sheer pantyhose, looked longer and more shapely. I don't know what to say," Jorge mumbled, unable to tear his eyes away from his reflection. Maria appeared behind him, smiling warmly. You don't have to say anything. Now let's do something about that hair and face. The next hour was a crash course in makeup application. Maria worked deftly, explaining each step as she went. Foundation to even out his skin tone, concealer to hide the dark circles under his eyes, a touch of blush to add color to his cheeks. She shaped his eyebrows, applied mascara to his lashes, and finished with a swipe of pale pink lipstick. For your hair, she mused, running her fingers through his shaggy locks. I think we'll keep it simple, a little styling product, and she worked quickly, tousling his hair into a softer, more feminine style that framed his face. When she was done, Jorge barely recognized himself. Wow, he whispered, touching his cheek gently. Maria beamed. You make quite the lovely woman, Jorge. Now for the finishing touches. She presented him with a pair of low-heeled sandals and a delicate necklace. Once these were in place, she stepped back to admire her handiwork. Perfect, she declared. Now are you ready to go shopping? Jorge's stomach dropped. Shopping? In public? Like this? Maria nodded, her expression softening. That was the bet, remember? An afternoon out, dressed as a woman. But don't worry, I'll be with you every step of the way. As they left the apartment, Jorge felt like he was walking in a dream. The sandals clicked against the pavement, a sound so foreign yet oddly satisfying. The dress swished around his legs, the breeze catching the fabric in a way that made him acutely aware of his body. They made their way to Maria's car, a sleek silver sedan parked on the street. Jorge reached for the door handle, then paused, suddenly unsure of how to sit in a dress. Maria chuckled. Smooth the back of the dress as you sit, then swing your legs in together. It'll become second nature before you know it. Following her instructions, Jorge settled into the passenger seat. The leather felt cool against his bare legs, another new sensation to add to the growing list. As they drove to the mall, Jorge found himself fidgeting with the hem of his dress, hyper-aware of every glance from passing drivers. Relax, Maria said, patting his knee. No one's looking at you the way you think they are. Confidence is key. The mall parking lot was busy, as expected on a Saturday afternoon. Jorge's heart raced as Maria found a spot and killed the engine. This was it. The real test. Ready? Maria asked, her hand on the door handle. Jorge took a deep breath, smoothing his dress. As I'll ever be. They stepped out into the warm afternoon sun. Jorge wobbled slightly on his heels, but quickly found his balance. As they walked towards the mall entrance, he was acutely aware of the way the dress moved with each step, the slight sway of his hips that seemed to happen naturally in these shoes. Inside the mall was a bustling hive of activity. Families pushing strollers, teenagers huddled in laughing groups, couples walking hand in hand. Jorge felt exposed, certain that everyone was staring at him, seeing through his disguise. But as they made their way through the crowd, he realized something surprising. No one was paying him any special attention. The occasional glance, sure, but nothing more than any other person might receive. He wasn't being scrutinized or judged. He was just another face in the crowd. Maria led him into a department store, heading straight for the women's section. Now, she said, rifling through a rack of blouses, let's find you some outfits to try on. Jorge found himself drawn to a deep green blouse with delicate embroidery around the neckline. He ran his fingers over the soft fabric, marveling at the intricate detail. Oh, that would look lovely on you, Maria commented, noticing his interest. Why don't you try it on? Before he knew it, Jorge's arms were full of clothing, blouses, skirts, dresses in various styles and colors. Maria ushered him towards the fitting rooms, a mischievous glint in her eye. Maria? Jorge whispered as they approached the attendant. I don't think I can... But Maria was already speaking to the young woman behind the counter. My friend here needs a room to try on some things. The attendant smiled warmly. Of course. Right this way, ma'am. Ma'am. The word echoed in Jorge's head as he followed the attendant to an empty fitting room. He'd been called ma'am, and it hadn't felt bad. Inside the small cubicle, Jorge stared at his reflection in the mirror. The person looking back at him was a stranger, yet somehow familiar. He took a deep breath and began to undress. The next hour was a whirlwind of fabric and zippers, of Jorge emerging from the fitting room in outfit after outfit for Maria's approval. The green blouse paired beautifully with a flowing white skirt. A red wrap dress hugged his body in ways he never knew it could be hugged. A pair of high-waisted trousers made his legs look impossibly long. With each new outfit, Jorge felt a little more comfortable, a little more confident. He found himself paying attention to how the fabrics felt against his skin, how different cuts accentuated different parts of his body. He began to understand why women spent so much time and energy on clothing and appearance. It wasn't just about looking good for others, it was about how it made you feel. As he twirled in a floral sundress, catching sight of his reflection, Jorge realized he was smiling. Actually smiling. When was the last time he'd felt this free? Having fun? Maria asked, a knowing look in her eye. Jorge blushed, smoothing the dress. Maybe a little. They left the store with several bags of new clothes, Jorge now wearing the green blouse and white skirt ensemble. As they walked through the mall, he found himself standing a little straighter, walking with a bit more swagger. The click of his heels against the tile floor felt like a declaration, "Here I am, world." Their next stop was a cosmetics store, its gleaming counters filled with an array of colorful products. Jorge, who had never given much thought to makeup beyond what he'd seen women wear, was overwhelmed by the sheer variety. "Where do we even start?" he asked, eyeing a display of lipsticks in every shade imaginable. Maria grinned. "Everywhere, mi amor, everywhere." What followed was an education in beauty products that Jorge never knew he needed. He learned about the difference between matte and glossy finishes, how to choose a foundation that matched his skin tone, the importance of a good skincare routine. The saleswoman who assisted them was helpful and patient, never once giving Jorge a strange look or questioning his presence. As Maria paid for their purchases, Jorge found himself drawn to a perfume display. He picked up a delicate glass bottle, inhaling the scent of jasmine and vanilla. It reminded him of warm summer nights and new possibilities. "Do you like that one?" Maria asked, appearing at his side. Jorge nodded, a little embarrassed. "It's nice." Without hesitation, Maria added it to their purchase. "Every woman needs a signature scent," she said with a wink. Their final stop was a shoe store. Jorge's feet were starting to ache in the sandals, and Maria insisted he needed proper footwear to go with his new outfits. They browsed rows of pumps, flats, and boots, Jorge marveling at the variety of styles and colors. He tried on several pairs, wobbling at first in the higher heels, but quickly finding his balance. A pair of black pumps made him feel powerful and sophisticated. Comfortable flats in a soft leather seemed perfect for everyday wear. And a pair of knee-high boots in rich brown leather made him feel like he could conquer the world. As they left the store, bags in hand, Jorge caught sight of their reflection in a store window. He barely recognized himself. The woman staring back at him looked confident, stylish, and happy. "Well," Maria said, checking her watch, "I think that concludes our shopping trip. How are you feeling?" Jorge took a moment to consider the question. How was he feeling? Tired, certainly. His feet ached, and he was more exhausted than he'd been in years. But there was something else, too. A lightness in his chest, a sense of possibility he hadn't felt in a long time. "I feel good," he said finally. "Really good." Maria smiled, squeezing his arm. "I'm glad. Now let's head home and you can change back into your regular clothes." As they walked towards the exit, Jorge felt a sudden pang of sadness. The idea of changing back into his old jeans and t-shirt felt somehow wrong, like putting on a costume rather than returning to normal. In the car, Jorge was quiet, lost in thought. Maria glanced over at him, a knowing look in her eye. "Penny for your thoughts?" Jorge sighed, running his hand along the soft fabric of his skirt. I didn't expect to enjoy this so much. Is that weird?" Maria shook her head. "Not at all, querido. Sometimes we discover parts of ourselves in the most unexpected places. As they pulled up to Jorge's apartment building, Maria turned to him. You know, the bet was just for the afternoon, but if you wanted to keep any of the clothes or makeup, well, that would be okay too. Jorge felt a rush of emotion, gratitude, confusion, excitement. I think I'd like that, he said softly. They carried the bags up to his apartment, Jorge once again marveling at how natural it felt to move in the dress and heels. Inside, he surveyed the pile of shopping bags, each one filled with possibilities. Well, Maria said, heading for the door, I'll leave you to it. Remember, Jorge, there's no shame in exploring who you are. Life's too short to live it for anyone but yourself. With a final hug and a kiss on the cheek, Maria left. Jorge stood in the middle of his apartment, surrounded by bags of women's clothing and makeup, feeling more alive than he had in years. He walked to the mirror, studying his reflection. The person looking back at him wasn't Jorge, the unemployed 28-year-old, drifting through life without purpose. This person had a spark in their eye, a flush in their cheeks. This person was standing tall, confident, ready to take on the world. Jorge ran his hands down the front of his blouse, smoothing the fabric. He thought about the bet, about how he dreaded this day. Now he couldn't imagine feeling any other way. With a deep breath, he made a decision. He wouldn't change back into his old clothes. Not yet. Maybe not ever. This wasn't just about winning a bet anymore. This was about discovering a part of himself he never knew existed. He picked up the perfume they'd bought, the one that smelled of jasmine and vanilla, and spritzed it on his wrists. The scent wafted around him, and he closed his eyes, inhaling deeply. When he opened them again, he smiled at his reflection. Nice to meet you, he whispered. I think we're going to get along just fine. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow through the apartment windows, Jorge sat down at his small desk. He opened his laptop, fingers hovering over the keyboard for a moment before he began to type. Dear Maria, he wrote, I don't know how to thank you for today. What started as a silly bet has turned into something so much more. You've opened my eyes to a part of myself I never knew existed, and I'm not sure I can go back to the way things were before. He paused, considering his next words carefully. I don't know what this means for my future, or who I am, or who I want to be, but I do know that for the first time in a long time, I'm excited to find out. You've given me a gift I can never repay. The gift of possibility. Jorge hit send before he could second-guess himself. Then, with a deep breath, he stood up and walked to his closet. He pushed aside the familiar flannels and worn jeans, making space for his new wardrobe. As he hung up each item, he felt like he was hanging up pieces of a new life, a new identity. The makeup and skincare products found a home on his bathroom counter, replacing the sparse collection of drugstore basics he'd accumulated over the years. He arranged them carefully, already looking forward to experimenting with different looks. As night fell, Jorge found himself reluctant to remove the makeup or change out of his clothes, but practicality won out. He needed to sleep, and he knew from Maria's lessons that sleeping in makeup was a definite no-no. He went through the routine Maria had taught him, removing makeup with gentle cleansers, applying moisturizer, treating his skin with care. As he wiped away the last traces of mascara, he studied his bare face in the mirror. It was the same face he'd always had, and yet somehow it looked different now, softer perhaps, more open. Changing into pajamas, his old t-shirt and boxers felt strange after a day in feminine clothing. The cotton felt rough against his smooth legs, and he found himself missing the soft swish of skirts around his calves. As he lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, Jorge's mind raced with thoughts and questions. What did all of this mean? Was this just a phase, brought on by the excitement of trying something new? Or was it something deeper, a truth about himself that he'd been suppressing all these years? He thought about his life up to this point. the directionless drift of unemployment, the feeling that he was somehow out of step with the world around him. For the first time, he allowed himself to consider that maybe the problem wasn't that he couldn't find his place in the world. Maybe the problem was that he'd been looking for that place as the wrong person. Sleep came fitfully, his dreams a kaleidoscope of images, twirling in dresses, walking confidently in heels, laughing with Maria as they tried on outfits. He woke several times, each time expecting to feel different, to have the events of the day fade like a strange dream. But each time he felt the same spark of excitement, the same sense of rightness. When morning finally came, Jorge woke to the soft ping of his phone. A new email from Maria. "My dear Jorge," it read, "I'm so proud of you for embracing this experience with an open heart and mind. Remember, there's no rush to figure everything out. Take your time, explore, and know that whatever you discover about yourself, I'll be here to support you. Life is a journey of self-discovery, and I'm honored to be a part of yours. All my love, Maria." Tears pricked at Jorge's eyes as he read the message. He felt a surge of gratitude for this woman who had come into his life as a stepmother, but had become so much more: a friend, a mentor, a guide. With renewed energy, Jorge got out of bed. He showered, reveling in the feeling of the water on his smooth skin. Then, standing in front of his closet, he made a choice. A rustle of plastic from the living room caught Jorge's ear as he toweled off. Brow furrowed, he stepped out of the steamy bathroom, scanning the room. There, on the coffee table, a plain brown package sat, half hidden beneath a pile of yesterday's discarded clothes. How had he missed it? Thanks for watching. The rest won't be viewable on YouTube, so check out Patreon if you want more. I hope you have a wonderful day, my cutie.